It was close. No, we were. We've been very diligent about this. Actually, it's because Martin's really disciplined. That's why.
Fantastic. That's better. I got the sound up.
Don't tell me, Sacha. Don't tell me that Andrew didn't used to come to appointments.
Well, he was. He was sporadic. Let's call it that. We call him Bales the Bailor.
Yeah, bail out. I know, but do you know what? Sometimes it's difficult really early in the morning.
You should train in the evening.
Oh, yeah, but it's difficult then as well.
There we go. How are you, mate? Anyway, all right.
Yeah, very well, thanks. Very well. Funny enough, I trained this morning. I did 1,000 kettlebells this morning. Like, not obviously 1,000 kettlebells. It was 1,000 movements with kettlebells this morning, and I was so exhausted, I had to have a sit down afterwards. I really felt quite queer afterwards. I thought, I think I've done something wrong here. So,
what do you mean 1,000 kettlebells? What would you be doing with those? So
you've got you know your sort of standard sort of like kettlebell lunge thing. You do one of those. That's one.
Oh, a lunge.
Yeah, between the legs.
1,000 lunges.
No, not 1,000 lunges. No, that's so you'll do 20 of those, and then you'll do 20 of the one where you pull it up. Tell you what, it's off Instagram. It's real.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of sit-ups as well, though. And when I say sit-ups, I mean just sort of lying down and sort of like going, But if you do that,
well done for trying.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Should we just get going?
Yeah, let's go.
Lovely. Okay, all right. Sacha, tell us a bit about yourself. So, who are you? Where are you from? And what do you do? Also, how long have you been doing it?
Cool. Well, who am I? So I'm a husband. I'm a father. I've got 3 kids. I was formerly a professional rugby player for the Bedford Blues. I was there for a long time, 14 years, 200 games. And then now, more sort of recently, I'm a gym owner. So I own a personal training gym. I have a team of about 7. And we deliver a very coach-led experience where we're sort of helping people improve their strength, fitness, overall well-being, and I'm sort of heading up and managing that. So life's pretty busy. I'm a keen kind of fitness enthusiast as well. I think I sort of compete in sort of fitness racing as well at the moment. So in a nutshell, that's me.
Wow. And you, I think originally, is it Hitchin you're from? You're from Hertfordshire, aren't you?
I grew up in Welling in Hertfordshire, and I went to school in Hitchin. I went to the Hitchin Boys' School, and then one of our teachers there had a link at the Blues back when the Blues were in the sort of the Premiership, and that's the connection. I sort of did quite well at school, and he got me into the academy, and been in Bedford ever since, pretty much.
There you go. And what jobs did your parents do? Were they into sports as well?
No, not at all, actually. My dad's sport was snooker, so very different to what I sort of went into. My dad was an entrepreneur, so he started a access control CCTV business in London, looking after mainly the financial sector. Bit of a huge risk taker, but a classic entrepreneur, just sort of made it up as he went along, but did quite well. And I think that's sort of encouraged myself and my sisters, who all have our own businesses, to sort of work for ourselves. And we saw what was possible from a young age if you take a risk and you're willing to work hard. So dad didn't really have too much influence on my sport. It was more my mum. My mum, I remember her taking me down to junior rugby when I was 6 and literally just kicking me up the ass and saying, off you go, you need to get out there. Apparently I was just smashing up the house at home, and she's like, you got to go and do something. So rugby seemed to be the natural one. So my mum was probably the biggest influence on my sporting career. She just encouraged it. Fun stat, when I started playing for Bedford, she literally came to every single game, home and away. She's super keen. But she would be the initial influence for my sport. But my dad definitely when it comes to work.
And you said you were sort of a fairly sort of energetic child. What did you want to be when you were a kid?
sport was the key. I just wanted to play professional sport. I wasn't particularly bothered what it was. I remember going to, I think it was, we're Tottenham Hotspur family, and my uncle's was huge into Spurs. I remember him taking me to Spurs when I was really young. I remember walking up the classic, walking up the terrace and coming into the stadium and going, wow, this is amazing. And then from that point on, I didn't really care what it was. I just wanted to be out on the pitch experiencing something like that. So from that point on, I was kind of like super into sport, whatever I was playing. Unfortunately, I had 2 left feet, so I wasn't very good at football. But then I sort of leaned into rugby, and I could sort of really got into that for about 5 or 6 years. And then I switched to golf, and then I played cricket, and then so I went back and forth. But then about 14 years old, I kind of really locked in and decided, yeah, I want to be a rugby player. And I feel quite lucky in that regard, because I think a lot of kids at that age don't really know what they want to do. But having that goal kind of just channeled me and was like, right, where do I need to get to and how do I get there? And I just kind of worked back and then just did what I needed to do, really. So it gave me a bit of a channel to go, a clear vision.
And was that then your first job then? So you went into the academy. Was that your first job? Was actually playing rugby?
Well, I had various part-time jobs as a kid, as you do. But what happened was, so I went into the academy. I played there for a few years whilst I was in school. And then I finished school relatively early because I did a GMVQ. So I took a year and a half out and went to Australia and went and played over there on the Sunshine Coast in Sydney as well. And then when Bedford got relegated, Colin Jackson was putting a squad together. And I got a call and he said, would you like to come back and be part of this academy program that we're setting up? We'll give you a 2-year deal. We'll pay you. And I was like, yes, this is it. This is the opportunity to go and have a go. And I come back, did a 2-year kind of academy contract. And then Rudy Strowley took over the club.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a really interesting time because Rudy kind of said, right, there's no contracts to start. And at the time, we had like 2 massive squads of players. We had a second team and a first team, which was really quite rare. And he just said, right, everyone come to pre-season and we'll see who wants it. And it's like, okay. Wow. Yeah, so a lot of boys left and actually thought, well, actually, I want some guarantees. And they went to sort of other clubs where they were guaranteed money. But I just thought, right, here's an opportunity to crack into the first team squad and have a go. So I did the pre-season with Rudy. And at the end of it, I was given a contract for another 2 years. And that ended up being another 14 years.
14 years.
Yeah.
And Rudy was, as I remember him, he was fairly uncompromising, wasn't he? Sort of, what was he, big sort of like Springbok, like he was quite hard, wasn't he?
Yeah, but he was very straightforward, There was no complication. He was like, I want you to go out and I want you to do this. And then he basically said to us in pre-season, right, I'm going to pick the fittest team. So all these young lads like myself was like, right, just get super fit, get as strong as you can, work as hard as you can over the summer. And I'm going to basically pick the team that is the fittest and strongest. And the training was pretty old school, pretty hardcore. Would literally knock the shit out of each other every Tuesday in training. But looking back, that squad was the last time we actually won anything as a club.
Oh, really? Like Spartans, you were so hard.
Yeah. Well, that team ended up, I didn't actually make it into the cup final team, but that actual squad that I was part of went on to win the EDF Cup at Twickenham against Plymouth. And that was the last bit of silverware the Blues had. So I definitely think Rudy instilled something in that team that, just that hard work ethic just paid dividends. And it suited me as well because I'm not the most naturally skilled player. So I was able to just work hard off the pitch, get fit, get strong, be quite physical. And that was an opportunity for me to sort of punch into the team.
And that sounds like, obviously the discipline that you had naturally as well. But outside of that, who else in the game inspired you or encouraged you? So who were your heroes, I guess?
I think it's kind of like the guys I watched playing would be epitomised by the kind of 2003 World Cup winning team. Delalio, Back, Richard Hill were the kind of boys that I was watching playing. And that England team was so consistent for such a long time in terms of the players that were in it. So that was the kind of players that I was watching. Johnson. But in terms of a player, it'd probably be Richard Hill, I would say. I used to watch him all the time and just so understated in the work that he did. But it was just, loads of tackles, loads of carries, loads of involvements in a game. Super fit, just, would be...
Was he your position?
He was, yeah.
Was he?
Yeah. So I was a back row. He could play 6 or 7, which is kind of what I ended up doing, 6 or 7.
Sorry, I might have to edit this out because it might be a bit too boringly technical for our general listenership. But I never really understood the difference between 6 and 7. What you're sort of hanging on one side or hanging on the other side?
Yeah, so seven is your open side. So off the side of the scrum, you'd be the open side of the field. So your roles would be more putting pressure on the 10, maybe getting to the breakdown first. You'd be like the first line of defence, linking up.
So you switch sides depending on where the line is going?
Generally, the 7 will stay on the open side of the scrum.
Right.
And then the 6 will stay on the blind side. 6, I would say, generally would be more of a line-out option, be a slightly bigger player, probably be a little bit more ball carrier. A 7 would probably be a little bit quicker, linking up with the backs, first to the breakdown, trying to cause some disruption there, trying to steal the ball. But now I think in the modern game, each back row forward is doing that all game. You kind of got to do it all now. I mean, you've only got to look at someone like Ben Earl. I don't know if you follow Saracens in England. Ben Earl, he's a 7, but he's playing 8 for England. So I think it says that where the modern game's gone is that if you're a back rower, you play all 3 now.
It used to be the case, didn't it, in the old days, that there was sort of a position for every size and shape you were. Do you think that's gone now? I mean, I can't imagine someone like Neil Back getting in anymore.
Well, I don't know.
Another foot taller and
I'd let you tell him that. I'm sure he'd have something. I think rugby union is an amazing game because it does have a position for all. I think I was lucky enough to go over to Rome the other weekend and watch the Scotland-Italy game, and I was quite close to the action. And the props are still, short, stout, stunky guys, and then you've got the backs that look great and, super fast. And I think it's such a brilliant game in that regards in terms of it doesn't close anybody out, especially for young kids as well. I've got 2 young boys, and you go down to the sport and you see all the kids are different shapes and sizes, and it's brilliant that they can all get involved and all play a part. So I think props are definitely different beasts these days, but they're serious athletes. I think super strong, can get around the pitch, and I guarantee most of those props who are big guys would be fitter, would be miles, aerobically fitter than a lot of people.
Yeah.
Sash, tell us a little bit about the highs and lows of professional rugby. So what were the most satisfying aspects of what you did? I mean, you mentioned obviously the EDF Cup win, but I guess what were the ups and downs of the sport?
Well, obviously being part of a team and winning and building towards something, getting to a cup final was great. I was lucky enough to be involved in 2 cup finals. Actually multiple cup finals because towards the end, there was lots of different options. You had the B&I Cup, we had the playoffs, but never actually got anything over the line, which was frustrating later in the career. But the highs would be just being able to play professional sport, be involved in it, and be on the pitch with great players that have gone on to play for England, be exposed to that, be in those environments. The bus trips, I would say, probably big highs for me. And that feeling after you've won a big game or you've done well, and then you're kind of free for that period afterwards to enjoy yourself. I think the lows would definitely be injuries and, having to fight back from injuries. I had a period where I would say 150 games, I didn't really have any injuries. And in the last 50 games that I played, I was kind of hampered. I broke my arm twice. I did damage my neck. I damaged my ankle. So I was constantly, probably the last 3 or 4 years of my career, I was trying to fight to get back into the team. I was in and out of the team, and I wasn't going from someone who was always being picked to someone who was, maybe on the bench or sometimes getting left out. It was difficult to deal with, and you need a lot of resilience. And it's something that I think most people that don't know the game or haven't been exposed to the game are not aware of, in terms of what the players are going through in terms of emotionally, because it's every week you're going in and it's subjective.
Yeah.
You might be picked, you might not. Imagine if you went to work and your boss said, you don't need you this week. You're like, whoa, what have I done wrong?
They often say that to Andy.
Yeah. So the highs would be, going back to your question, the highs would be, winning those big games and sort of the periods afterwards where you're kind of free from training and you can just enjoy yourself with the boys. That's the best parts for me in the changing rooms. And then the lows would definitely be periods of injury and having to fight back, and the subjective nature of the sport in terms of, ultimately it comes down to the coach's opinion of you in that moment. And that's difficult to deal with sometimes when you feel like you're doing everything you can to put your best foot forward and you're not getting picked. Plays with your head a bit.
And I'm thinking of, I guess, because Mike Rayer must have been your coach for a long period of your career.
Yeah.
When you do have the sort of those sort of moments when you're not being picked, what's that conversation like? I mean, how do you sort of maintain a relationship if you feel that trust has been broken?
Well, it's just rugby, like, what do you do? Do you sulk about it, or do you just get back to work on Monday and you try and prove them wrong? You would question it all the time. I would always be on the office and knocking on his door and sort of saying, why aren't I being picked? I feel good. And I think sometimes when you've had such big injuries, the coaches then have a bit of a question mark over, are you the same player? And especially when I did my ankle, when the upper body limbs are okay, they don't impact you too much. They just, once they heal, you're good to go. But when you damage a lower body limb, they'll start questioning your speed and your athletic ability. And I think I was always just trying to prove that, look, I'm the same player. I can hit the same times. I'm the same this. Whereas sometimes coaches can maybe get an opinion of you because of the injury. And they're difficult conversations. All depends how the team's doing as well. If the team's under pressure, then it can be a harder conversation. If the team's winning and it's okay, then there's a bit more scope for the manager to get you back in and try. So yeah, they were not easy conversations, but I think you just gotta, as a player, just keep turning up on a Monday, keep training, keep working hard, and eventually your opportunity comes back.
Yeah.
Presumably, in all sort of professional sport, that competitive element means that you're half looking over your shoulder that someone else might take your place, or that you've got to push a bit harder to take someone else's place. How hard is that when in terms of teammates, that you might both be competing for the same position?
Yeah, I think it's a positive and a negative. I think it's positive in terms of when you've got a really competitive squad, every time you go into training, it lifts the levels. In the gym and on the pitch, if you've got really good players around you and really good players in your position, it kind of focuses your mind and thinking, right, I've got to match these guys or get up to them or prove that I'm, better than them. In a situation where you're not getting picked, it's difficult. It's difficult. You've just got to, because you obviously feel that you're the player that should be picked, but you've just got to keep turning up to training. You've got to be a team player first and foremost. You can't let any sort of negativity slip into the team room. But it's difficult, But it's. I think it's more of a positive than a negative for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. It drives the standard.
During your time at Bedford, then, who were the main? Andrew knows more about this than me. But who were Bedford's main rivals during those years? Did they change, or were they more or less the same over the time? And also, did you have any particular personal rival? Your nemesis that you'd keep coming up against in your career?
Not really, to be honest. From a team perspective or a player perspective?
Well, both. Do the team first.
No,
Just
I
everything.
think the championship. So for what I played in, majority was the championship, and I would say the club's biggest rivals throughout that period consistently would probably be the Cornish Pirates, Doncaster, just some of the bigger teams in that league. Would always be competitive games. London Welsh, when they were in the league before they folded, they were always competitive in sort of my time. And then whoever's coming down from the Premiership. So you would have Bristol, were in there for a few years. Saints came down, Newcastle, Worcester were sort of the teams that we were mixing it against most of the time. And those would be the games that you'd really have to focus on. In terms of players' nemesis, I wouldn't say there was any nemesis. There's lots of players I enjoyed playing against. I enjoyed playing against Blair Cohen from Cornish Pirates. He ended up going on to play for Scotland. He was a back rower, played 7 or 8, really physical. And then who else? I can't think off the top of my head, to be honest.
Don't want to compliment too many people anyway.
No, I think it was never really about other players, to be honest. It was always just about us as a team and making sure every time I went out to play that you play as well as you can and you have an impact.
I remember, Sash, once you said that your trademark was coming round the corner and flattening people. How would you expand on that? Would you say that was your sort of signature, was that you were very good in the tackle?
Yeah, it was definitely not passing and catching. I remember, so my strength of my game was being physical, was tackling mainly, and trying to disrupt at the tackle point. I remember Mike Reyes saying to me, Sash, come in the office. He goes, I want you to stop trying to pass and sort of get in the way of. All I want you to do is catch the ball. When you catch the ball, run as hard and as straight as you can. And when you haven't got the ball, just knock the shit out of whatever's in front of you. I was like, I can do that. And I think he picked me for 150 games after that. So rugby's a simple game sometimes.
That's very good direction though, isn't it? That's someone telling you the truth and giving you focus, right?
Yeah. And I think the thing in sport, make your strengths don't focus too much on your weaknesses. Focus a lot on your strength and what you bring to the game. And then sharpen up your weaknesses. I think at the level we were playing, all players had a little bit of a weakness. We weren't top level players. We were good championship players. So if you focus too much on what you're not good at, you take your mind off what you can bring to the game. Yeah.
Whilst you were playing, you were an LGBTQ advocate. So, and I guess this is more of a bigger question about the attitudes that have changed during your time in the game. What did you experience, around not just LGBTQ, but all the other aspects of the culture around rugby? Because I think your career must have spanned probably the biggest time of change, professionally at least, in the game.
Yeah, interesting question. I mean, I didn't experience too much myself. I was part of. I got asked to be on the cover of GQ, so I was on that as a rugby player at that time. I was just welcomed by that community, to be honest, and I've never had any issue with it. I haven't actually known. I know one player within our squad who turned out to be gay, and it never really impacted us at all, and it was never really an issue. I think the game's a bit more open to it now, and the world's a bit more open to it now, to be honest. And it's like it should be. People, what they do is up to them, and it's their choice.
Was this guy was his teammate of yours before Gareth
Thomas?
Gareth Thomas had come out, and was your colleague sort of?
Well, when I played with him, we didn't know. I think that answers your question, doesn't it? It was at a time when it probably felt that he couldn't come out. It's since post playing that he's came out, and since we've met up and other things, it's no different, to be honest. It's the same lad that you always see, and like it should be.
In other ways, has the culture in rugby, because might be unfair, but I'm not sure. 20 years ago, there was a lot of booze-based the old-fashioned drinking. You got to sink a certain number of
Yeah.
pints to be a guy in the team. Do you think that's changed, or is that still? Because the physical demands,
I think
levels of fitness.
as a player, or as a supporter, or as a sport.
No, well, as a player,
I'd say, yeah, I think the boys would definitely drink a lot less now, just because of the nature of. I think. I would say I think I don't know. In my time, it was very much, you would train hard all week, and at the end of, if you win a good game, you go out and have a few beers, and there was a big drinking culture, especially at the Bedford, with Mikey Raya. I think they would definitely drink a little bit less now, just because of all the information that comes forward in terms of the impact of alcohol and recovery and sleep and how it does. But I think also it has to be part of the game. There's another side to rugby where the team has to bond and sort of come together, and the teams that do that well with good social sides work hard on the pitch together. They're united. You can have the best 15 players in the world on the pitch that just don't get on and they're not going to perform, whereas you can have 15 pretty good players that would die for each other and the best mates and they'll beat that team. That's rugby. So
it's an amazing thing, isn't it, about most team sports, is that's true.
Yeah. And
that team spirit often beats a better technical side.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. and in terms of do people still drink at rugby? 100% yes. I was at the Blues on Saturday, and the marquee was there was a lot going. It was noisy and a lot going on. Put it that way. I was on a fairly aggressive table myself as well. So
I think the supporters, but it's it will always be like that, right? I think as far as the supporters go, right?
Yeah.
Do you still play, Sacha? Do you
I don't know. I've played 2 games since I retired. I think for me, I was quite lucky in terms of when I knew I was going to finish, I knew what I was going to do afterwards. So I had a very clear goal. I was working for myself, couldn't really afford to get injured. So that's why I didn't play initially. And then I just really enjoy what I do now. So I've kind of replaced that and haven't really felt the need or the urge to go and play. It's a question I get asked quite a lot, actually. Do I miss it? Do I still play? And I don't miss the game. I miss the boys, the changing rooms, but every now and again when you catch up, we talk about all the old stories and stuff like that, and that's good crack. And not being in that environment every day where you're kind of walking in the change rooms and it's just constant banter, you do miss that. But in terms of playing, it's a lot easier to watch these days.
So when you moved over, you've been talking about the injuries that were sort of creeping up on you, and it feels like you'd already decided what you were going to do post rugby. When you finally made that change, then was that something which was being you thought it through to the extent that you're really ready for the change, or were you also partly, I guess, concerned that you might be leaving something which had been so important to you for such a long time? Yeah,
so it happened quite abruptly for me. So I didn't intend on retiring so quick. It came to a conclusion that the club weren't going to offer me another contract. So I had other options to go and play in the leagues elsewhere. But I just looked at it. I'd built up a bit of a client base. I kind of got the hint of the impression earlier that season that it was going to be difficult for me to stay on and keep playing. So I'd started working with some people, some of the directors became clients, and I was training them in the club gym. So then I had to just make a decision in the period about 3 months. I was like, right, I either move and go and play other clubs or travel, or I sort of finish and start leveraging kind of the reputation that I had in the town, because I'd been fortunate to play for the club for 14 years. I knew a lot of people, I had a lot of connections, and I thought, right, the sensible thing to do would be to stay, to retire, to leverage it and start build my business from there.
I can sort of speak with some authority about, because I was obviously one of your customers fairly early on. And I think the thing that, as a customer of yours, was really helpful when I showed up, was that it was that sort of level of discipline that you brought directly from, I guess, your rugby. It was that sort of, you've got to commit, and it was a training of, well, if you do want to change, then there's only one person who's going to make that happen, and you have to find that discipline, but also the encouragement around that. So would you say that your experiences within the Blues and within your professional career is actually the key to what you now deliver to your customers within your PT business?
Yeah, I said there were lots of parallels. There's so many parallels. Number one, from professional sport to business. There's so many lessons learned in terms of, you got to work hard. You got to work as a team. You've got to analyze what you do. You're not always going to get it right. You're going to win. You're going to lose, and actually probably going to, make a lot of mistakes. I sort of look back and think I took an enormous amount from professional sport that has helped me to be able to build a business, just in terms of the resilience that you build, the contacts that you get, the experiences that you go through, the fact that every week you can either win or you can lose. In life, it's not like that for most people. It's pretty consistent. Whereas in sport, 1 week you're on top of the mountain, and next minute, bang, you've lost, and you're like, oh, it's all gone wrong. So you had to kind of rebuild. So I think that prepares you well for business in terms of it's not always going to go your own way, and you've got to get back on the horse every Monday and try and fix the problems and go again. And personally, for me, I feel that the sport kind of gave me a lot of resilience, which is sort of critical for starting your own business and getting things up and running. And also how to operate within a team. Now I have a team of 7. I have to sort of lead those and sort of lead by example. And you sort of learn that from a sporting context as well.
Were you a leader in Bedford in the rugby team?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'd sort of lead the defence. I captained the team on a number of occasions as well. So yeah, that sort of came quite natural to me in terms of the leadership. I was very much a kind of try and lead by example rather than anything else.
You said your boys are playing rugby already?
Playing football. So one boy is. I've got 7-year-old, Zach's 7. He's playing football. My daughter Maddox, who's 4, and I've got Bodie, who's 18 months. So I think Bodie would like to be playing rugby, but he's not quite ready yet.
And just hypothetically, would you be happy to see any of them become professional rugby players?
I'm on the fence on this one, to be honest, because it's, half of me was like, yes, absolutely, I would. And then I think the kind of nurturing, caring part of you as a dad is like, it's tough. It's tough. Professional sport is tough. And they've got to be prepared for it. And they're going to be mentally up and down. And, they're going to need the tools to deal with that. So I don't know. But yeah, absolutely. If they lean into it and want to pursue sport, then absolutely, let's go, 100%.
There's also, I guess, it is becoming increasingly more physical. I know there's a lot of discussion around the tackle heights at the moment and contact. Would that also have a bearing on the way you felt about them going into rugby in particular?
Not really. I always, the words of my mum in the back of my ear, you can't live life in cotton wool. Just get out there. I think what they're doing with the game is really important, especially at the lower level and the non-elite game in terms of trying to protect the head contact and stuff. I think they've got to be careful that they don't change the game too much, especially at the top level. But it's a full contact physical sport. If you don't want collisions and the risk of those things, then you've got to seriously think about questioning not playing the sport. For me, it's part of the sport. It's what those boys, when they go onto the pitch on the weekend, they know what they're signing up for. I think a lot of it's coming from the lawsuits, isn't it? Because the unions are kind of shitting themselves from what the players are trying to now sue them for. but they've got to be careful how they manage it so it doesn't ruin the game.
Yeah,
to be honest.
I think that was a bit of an eye opener for a lot of people when, I don't know if you saw that documentary with Steve Thompson. Have you seen it?
No, but I heard about it, and I understand the situation he's in. It's.
I know you know about changing the game too much because I don't know. In the last couple of years, I've just seen a lot of red cards that I felt, that poor guy had no chance to get down. Someone more or less ran into their chest.
Yeah,
it's
difficult. It's very difficult.
It's got a split second. It looks terrible, maybe in slow motion, but I think, I don't know. What do you think? Do you
I think it's very difficult to manage. I think what they brought in the World Cup with the bunco is really good, where they can sort of give you a yellow card and then have 10 minutes to look at it, and the referees have got time. I think one of my best friends is an elite level referee, so I get a bit of an extra insight in on that, and that bringing that in gives them that little bit of, just takes the pressure off in the moment, especially if you're in a test match or a big sort of premiership game when all the crowd want a decision straight away. They can give that yellow card and say, right, let's put it on review, and we can get more eyes on it, away from the crowd, away from all the intensity of that, and they can come up with a better decision. I think that's a really good. That's really what they've brought in there is really, really good and effective. Again, it's really difficult, isn't it? Because if you got, again, going back to different shapes and sizes in the game, if you've got a 6'8" second row, and then you've got a 5'5" scrum half who snipes around the corner, and that second row's got to get down to the right tackle height, but it's very difficult.
Yeah.
So talking of the international game, and Martin's going to crucify me for this. Sash,
Bales asks authors and composers what's their starting 11 or 15.
Right.
I think asking an ex-professional rugby player what is starting is absolutely fine.
They love talking about it.
It's when you ask the ballet dancers that you play at scrum half, and this poor girl is what
about?
It's actually a Lions question. So, Sash, who would you have as captain of the Lions? In Australia, isn't it, the next one?
Captain of the Lions. Right now, you know what? I think Jamie George. I think he's great. I think he'd definitely be the first choice in his position. I think he talks well. He's won a lot as a player. Like, you underestimate what he's won. He's won multiple European Cups, Premierships. He's a winner. I think he would be probably up there, definitely, or one of the Irish boys, maybe. That'd be my choice.
Would you select Owen Farrell?
I would. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Faz. I was lucky enough to play with him at Bedford briefly. Played one game with him when he was 18, and he walked on the pitch and started shouting at us. I was like, "Who's this kid?" And straight away from then, you knew this guy's a leader, and he's not taking a backward step. And I think. I was thinking about this yesterday. I just can't understand the criticism that he gets. He's an all-time England point scorer. England captain. Yeah. He's won loads as a player. Just because you don't maybe like the style of rugby he plays, you can't argue with what he's won and what he's done and how many points he's scored. And it frustrates me, and it's just typical media, isn't it? And
he gets a bad press. I
just don't get it.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I always assume that 99% of all the online hate for him is from Aussies, Irish, Welsh, Scottish people who are desperate for him not to play for England.
I think people just jump on the bandwagon, to be honest, and they just like to have an opinion about something they probably don't know much about. I think if you look at his stats, look at his goal kicking, look at how many points he's scored, if you look at him and what the players say about him, I think the real currency is what the players think, because they're with him every day and they're on the pitch with him, and every player talks, he's the man. So I think, and from my very, very small exposure of Owen, he's a great guy, and he's super driven, and it blows my mind that the criticism he gets. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I'm slightly conscious of time. Martin, have you got anything else for Sash?
No, I just want to say thank you ever so much, Sash. That was really fantastic. Really enjoyed it talking to you.
Nice, boys. I hope I added some value.
No, really good. Really, really good, actually. Really enjoyed it. Thanks, mate.